Good evening, everyone. Great to see this many folks here. We never knew what was going to come when we decided to do this, but it's awesome to see everybody here. It's Thursday, November 20th. This is our 6 p.m. meeting. I want to welcome everybody to the first town hall / city council meeting here at New Brighton Middle School. It was an idea of one of our council members, and it's great that we're able to do this. And if it works out, maybe we'll do it more often. I'd like to thank the Soquel Union School District for allowing us to use the Performing Arts Center. There's our cat here. So this cat feels right at home and came around and said hi to everybody. So there we go. What kind of cat is that, Gene? A snow bagel? Bengal. Snow Bengal. Kitty. All right. We don't do the traditionally this kind of situation where all the council members are sitting out here, so I'll just have each council member stand up so we can do our roll call. Councilmember Westman, Councilmember Orbach, Councilmember Jerry Jensen, and Margot. We're all here. Thank you guys. Thanks for everybody here. I think they're strategically out in different areas so you can all ask them questions later. So. At this time, it is a meeting, so we are going to do a pledge of allegiance. So if everybody can stand, join me. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United
States of America,
and to the republic which stands one nation under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice
for all.
Thank you. This is the time where we usually ask for additional materials. Chloe, would you happen to know if we had any additional materials? Great. Thank you. Okay, again, tonight's format will be presentations by the staff. It'll be on the budget, financial planning, ways the community can stay connected to local government here in Capitola, and a series of presentations that will be done from the fine folks here at the front table. We will wait until the end of all the presentations and then have questions. Hopefully we can start off with one round of questions, get through that, and if we have time, we'll go for another round of questions. But we do want to leave time for public comment at the end. So we'll keep that in mind and see how that goes. Tonight we have Attorney Mark Tran with us. He's from our City Attorney's Office. Thank you for being here. And I'm going to let the staff introduce themselves as they come up and they can do the presentations. But again, it's great to see the turnout. We always have great city council meetings with lots of engagement, but this is kind of special where we can do this. So thank you for coming. Now on to staff. Thank you.
Great. Thank you so much, Mr. Mayor. For those of you that haven't met me or don't know me, my name is Jamie Goldstein. I'm the city manager. I want to take a minute before I get started to thank Chloe Woodmansee in my office for really did the legwork to prepare for this. So if it goes well, it's all her credit. She deserves all the credit. She put a lot of work into this presentation. Jessica Kahn, our Public Works Director, Katie Hunley, our Community and Economic Development Director, and Sarah Ryan, our Chief of Police. Each one of them are going to talk a little bit later, but I am going to kick off and sort of lead the presentation this evening. I will tell you a story about this cat. So this cat actually looks almost identical to my old cat who disappeared a couple of years ago and never came home one night. They're called snow bagels. They're very fancy. They're very affectionate. They're very comfortable around people. The other day I was driving around this neighborhood and I actually saw that cat walking in someone's front yard, and I literally stopped my car and got out because I thought, that's my Leo. And only when I stopped and saw him and petted him, he behaved just like Leo did I realize he's a little bit smaller with a little bit different coloring. But they're wonderful cats, they're very expensive, and they're very affectionate. So with that, I'm gonna kick it off. First off, we're gonna talk a little bit about the city, how the city works, how the city of Capitola operates. We're gonna talk about our financial outlook. And then I'm going to turn it over, and we're going to turn it over to our team to talk about projects that we're working on, plans we're working on, kind of an update, and a whole bunch of things. We've got a lot of material, so I'm going to talk quick. People are going to talk fast. Normally, a rule of thumb is don't talk to people for an hour. I think we're gonna try to keep it to an hour, but I can't promise. We've never gone through this all as one. So it's gonna take a little bit. First off, I think everyone knows sort of the basic story of Capitola. Incorporated in 1949, we just celebrated our 75th anniversary. We're small, only 2 square miles, and we rank at the top of a lot of different lists for small towns in California and America. We have a city council. They're all in the room here, our mayor's here. Council members are elected to 4-year terms. We have 2 terms as a limit, so you can do 8 years consecutively. We have a mayor and vice mayor. I think everyone knows they're chosen by the council each year, and that tends to rotate. The council makes the laws, sets the budget, adopts the policy for the city, and then gives direction at meetings. So this is noticed as a council meeting, but we don't have any action for the council to take. But that's how the council makes decisions as a body, as a full group of 5 individuals. They need to vote and give direction. And that's how we make city laws, how we make city budgets, how we give direction to staff. Oh, I did the wrong thing. Well, maybe we can work on that. I hit the space bar instead. Then we have our city staff. I hire the staff and the city manager. The council hires me. Council hires the city attorney. And it's my responsibility as a city manager then to hire the staff and hire the department heads to manage and run the different departments for the city. We take direction from the city council. They set the policy, they set the budget. It's our job to implement. We also work for the community. That's one of the key aspects of public service, is serving the community you're working in. In addition, we also have all of our volunteers. I see a lot of volunteers in the room this evening. And that's another really important piece of Capitola, is the volunteers in the museum, the volunteers for the police department, the volunteers, so many other different ways people volunteer on boards and commissions, our finance committee, our art and cultural commission. Those are all pieces, important pieces of the puzzle. Okay, so what do? We're city, there's different kinds of cities. There are what are called full service cities, and then there are contract cities. Capitola is sort of in between. A full-service city is like the city of Santa Cruz. They have a fire department, a police department, a water department. They have a department for everything. Contract cities maybe contract with the sheriff for policing services or don't have a fire department. Like I said, Capitola is kind of in between. We do a lot of things in-house, but we also rely on our regional partners for a fair number of other services, specifically things like Central Fire and some other districts that we'll talk about. I did it again. On the next slide. So these are the things the city doesn't do. You know, we don't do firefighting, as I mentioned before. They're governed by their own independent board of directors, as is the school district. I promise I will not touch it. If anyone sees me going back to that space bar again. As everyone knows, in California, the school districts are not managed by the cities. And then we partner with other jurisdictions in the county to do library services, 911 services, animal services, a whole bunch of other things. So as a city, we work in this larger ecosystem of government agencies throughout the county. Okay, so now we're going to talk a little bit about city finances. One of the key aspects I always try to tell people when I'm trying to describe sort of how cities work and how we get our money and what we're doing is, you got to understand, cities aren't like a business. Our goal isn't to make money. Our goal isn't to like squirrel away money. Our goal is to take in money from all of you in taxes and provide services to you. At the end of the day, the goal isn't who can put away the most money in the bank. The goal is who can use the money that you get to provide the best possible services. So fundamentally, cities just operate different than businesses. There's no profit motive in here. What there is trying to get the tax revenue that we get to provide services as efficiently and effectively as we can for the community. How do we do that? We do that through our budget. Budget is annual operating plan for the city. We have a July 1st through June 30th fiscal year. So each year the city council adopts a budget which prioritizes where the money is going to go for the city. What are the projects we're going to do? What are we going to be? Are we going to increase staffing in a department, decrease staffing in a department? What are the priority projects? Where are we putting our energy? That's what the budget does. And big picture, we think about the budget in Capitola is around a $23 million annual budget at this point. Okay, so we have a budget, we have to have revenue. Where do we get money? This is where we get money. Our primary revenue source is sales tax. I think most of you who've been around the city for a long time know that. Sales tax is sort of a blessing and a curse for Capitola. I think it's been this way for a long time. The amazing thing about sales tax is that we, by a lot of estimates, probably 60% of the sales tax is paid for by people that don't live in Capitola, which is great. We get resources that are paid for by other people to provide services in our community. The problem with sales tax is that it goes up and it goes down. It's one of the most volatile of revenue sources. Property tax comes in a little bit like clockwork. You can depend on it. You can forecast it over the years. It's going to grow at 3 to 4%. It's relatively easy to track. Sales tax, I've been city manager in Capitola for quite a while. We've had years where sales tax has gone down 20% a year. And so you can imagine if 46% of your budget is that volatile, it's both a blessing and a curse. We have a lot of resources, but at the same time, it's a tough resource to rely on, the sales tax. Okay, this is one of my favorite graphics. It's one of the things I love to tell folks is, you know, we all pay a lot of taxes. Like, everyone in this room pays a lot of taxes. I know that, I pay a lot of taxes. And when you start to think a little bit about where your tax money is going and how much tax money is actually paid, I think it's kind of striking. So these are some sort of just back of the envelope calculations. And we'll just quickly just touch on it. Is sales tax, you pay 9.25% sales tax. Of that, Capitola gets 1.5%. So $60 million of sales tax is generated in the city. The city gets less than $10 million. Property tax. Think about $46 million a year is generated in property tax. We get about 7.5% of that amount. Income tax, and this is a guesstimate. I don't actually have everyone's income tax returns. We don't get a penny of that. So, and then TOT, that's the only one on this list that the city gets 100% of and retains all the money. Nobody else, we don't share with anybody else. Thank you so much for asking. TOT is the hotel tax, transient occupancy tax. And again, it's another tax that's paid for by people that generally don't live within the city limits. So this is putting it graphically. There's about $191 million of taxes generated in Capitola. City gets about 7.9% of that total. Where do your taxes go? Federal government, state government. They go the property tax side. A lot of it goes to the schools, the county, central fire. All other good agencies, all providing services. Maybe not as providing them as directly as the city, in the case of the federal government, the state government, but certainly providing services. This is the property tax breakdown. So for every dollar you spend when you write that check to the county assessor every year, if you own a home, lucky enough to own a home, this is on average for Capitola residents how it breaks out, where that money goes. We're going to take a look here. We're going to touch on it in a second compared to some other cities. This is where we get our sales tax, which, as you remember, is our largest sales tax, largest revenue source. It comes from the 41st Avenue corridor primarily. The village, Central Village, is 7.4%. It's actually increased over the years. When I started, I think it was closer to 4 or 5%. The village, in proportion to the rest of the town, has grown. We're going to talk about that. And then the upper village we think about as being like kind of the Gales, on up to the freeway, sort of that zone. Oh, one other important point to mention. I talked a bit about the challenges around sales tax. And the other thing is that in general, when you think about sort of what generates sales tax, if you think about 100,000 square feet of average retail. Retail comes in all different flavors. You can have very high performing retail that can generate a whole bunch of money per square foot and low performing retail. Average retail, I'm talking about kind of like a Ross, a Target, something like that, generates around $665,000 a year for the city. 100,000 square feet of hotel, again, depends on the hotel, but about an average hotel comparable to some of the ones we have in Capitola generates about twice that. And it generates 80% less trips. So keep that in mind as we sort of start thinking towards the future. It's about twice the revenue per square foot and a whole lot less traffic. Okay, so I'm gonna talk some about our challenges in Capitola. This is a big one. You know, if you go back to 2006 and you look at the sales tax amount of money that the city of Capitola received, and then you grow that in by inflation over time versus where we are today, we're about $3 million in the hole. So that's lost purchasing power that the city has suffered over the last, what is that? That's a little bit more than about 20 years. So that's been happening pretty consistently, is that our sales tax figures just haven't kept up with inflation. And that's sort of like death by 1,000 cuts, right? Like if your purchasing power is just slowly declining over time. So then I want to talk a little bit about kind of two types of money that we have, two basic flavors of money. We have what we call our general fund, which we can use for basically anything, and then we have special revenue funds. General funds pay for all kinds of different city services. They pay for all of our departments here, for our police officers, for our folks out in the crew, taking care of the streets and the roads. They really pays for basically anything. Special revenue funds, on the other hand, are sources of funding that are dedicated for a specific purpose, and we have to use it for that purpose. They can be restricted by the voters, which is the case in the youth funding, is that there's a little bit of our hotel tax that is dedicated to youth, or it can be restricted by ordinance, which is the case with our art and cultural fund, which a little bit of large commercial projects, they have to pay into a fund to build out public art. And then we also have things like gas tax and Measure D road taxes to take care of the roads. So those are kind of the key special revenue funds that we get for the city. They have to be used for a specific purpose. Okay, hope I'm not putting everyone to sleep. I love this stuff, but it is what I do for a living. The city has kind of, thinking about big picture, four different kinds of revenue that we receive. One is taxes, and taxes have to be approved pursuant to Prop 13 by voters. So the city can't just willy-nilly change the taxes. You have to put something on the ballot, requires 50 plus one vote percent to pass if it's a general tax. And if it's a special tax, if it's for a restricted purpose, it's actually 66% to pass. Another form of revenue we have is a fee for service. That is like if somebody comes into Katie's department and says that they want a fence permit, I don't know what it costs, maybe it costs $75. It's the cost to provide the service. And we're limited with our fees for service to the actual amount that the service costs us to deliver. So for example, we couldn't charge $500 for a fence permit if it only takes a planner half an hour to issue a fence permit. By law, we have to demonstrate that the service provided matches what the fee is. And that's done through a formal study, and we adopt a cost plan basically for our fees for service. We do have a little bit of discretionary charges. There's a few things the city can do where we really can pick an amount. Parking rates would be one. However, parking rates are subject to the Coastal Commission's approval. So the Coastal Commission, we can pick an amount, they could veto it. We do have a few leases, not very many in the city of Capitola, but the leases are sort of, they can be negotiated with a private party, so there's discretions in how much those can be. And then infractions, the big one being the parking tickets. We do get to set the amount of the parking ticket. And if anyone got a parking ticket here in the last couple months, you guys are also good. We did. We just did. We significantly increased the amount of parking ticket costs in the village recently. I think it was $37. So we brought it more in line with the times here recently. And then, lastly, we get grants. And grants are a really important source of revenue to build big things. You know, to do things like our library, to rebuild our wharf, to build out the community center that we're doing right now over at Jade Street Park, the playground there. I want to say this building, but I think it was the gym, I think, used some pretty extensive. I see somebody in the audience who probably knows the answer to this question. I think the gym used a lot of federal grants to help build the gymnasium here for New Brighton Middle School. We've been real successful in recent years. No, shaking his head. I guess we've been real successful in recent years here, pulling in a lot of funding for our projects. This is just the amount of money that we pulled in. It's not when they were awarded, but it's actually when we received the funding. But you can see pretty significant sources of funds. And those are dedicated to specific projects. The grants come in for a playground or for a wharf or for whatever it is that we've applied for. Don't do that. Thank you. You guys are saving me. Okay, where do we spend our money? The majority of the money we spend, about $21 million, is on general fund expenditures, is on personnel. It's on the people. It's probably not surprising. We're a service agency. We have a public works department. We have to take care of the streets, the parks, all those things, and we have a police department. Those are the kind of the biggest costs. Second biggest cost is contracts. It's a little bit of a misleading number because the largest expenditures in contracts are some of those intergovernmental partnerships that we have. So the contract, and being in the contract is, for example, the 911 center. So we end up spending, I think it's almost $450,000, $500,000 a year on having dispatchers work out of the 911 center. That shows up in contracts, but obviously it's a cost that could be a personnel cost if we had those people in-house. Okay, and then expenditures by departments. So this it's about $21 million, so it's nice that it matches. And this shows where the different departments, so the biggest department, as I mentioned before, is the police department. Second biggest department is public works. And then basically the remaining 25%, as you can see, is divided up between these other divisions on the pie chart. And then so that was the general fund expenditures. This is where we spend our special revenue money. So you can see streets is predominantly where we spend our special revenue. That's the gas tax, SB1, the RTC Measure D funding. And that's the key funding that we use to take care of our streets and sidewalks. And Jessica will talk more about that here shortly. We also have a little specific peel off in our hotel tax. It's dedicated to support local businesses, which we split between the Chamber of Commerce and the village, the BIA, the Village Business Improvement District. And then we get a whole bunch of restricted housing funding as well, that we only can use for housing purposes. Okay, so then this is the second big story in terms of the long-term kind of future for what's happened to the city over the last 15 years is the PERS retirement costs. So I talked about the inflationary impacts of sales tax. This is the other big one. So back in 2010, 11, in that era, our UAL, our unfunded accrued liability, which is basically our pension debt with CalPERS, the payment on that was under $1 million. Today, we're north of $3 million. What's interesting to know about that is that has nothing to do with any decision that anybody in this room made. These were decisions that were made in the 90s in Sacramento by the CalPERS boards when interest rates went from being incredibly high and dropped. They didn't change their assumed rates of return. And when the Great Recession hit, they got absolutely clobbered. The second thing that happened was around 2006, I believe, the city changed its retirement benefits, which ended up increasing the costs. But what we're seeing here is this is really paying for what happened back then. And we're on this cost escalation scheme. We're supposed to level out. That number is supposed to level out, and it's supposed to stay there, and then it's supposed to start dropping. So at that point, the city's going to be in great shape, once we've sort of eaten the elephant, as it were. But these two things, the PERS retirement costs and then the inflationary losses on sales tax, have been kind of the big driving forces behind sort of the city's finances over a long period of time. And I guess the other fun thing I should say about the UAL is it doesn't matter what we do going forward, that number is the number. So if we were to lay off every city employee tomorrow, that's still the payment. This is about the retirees we already have. So it's a frustrating number, drives me and a finance director crazy, but it's what it is. Something I'm pretty proud of is that when I became city manager early on, many of you will remember the storm drain failure in the village 2011. That was coming on the heels of the Great Recession, and it took us to really a low point in cash. I don't know if I see anyone in the room who was in the council at that point, but I remember going to the council and saying, hey, can I get a line of credit with the bank? Because I'm not sure that I'm gonna be able to make payroll in November. And they said, that sounds scary, and let's wait. Turns out we made payroll in November, we made it through, but our reserves were down to just over $500,000 that we sort of had at that point. We've done a really good job of increasing reserves. The council's been really dedicated and stuck to it over the years. You can see at this point, we're almost up to $6 million in total reserve accounts. Okay, city outlook. Looking ahead, we do have challenges. These aren't dire challenges. This is showing a 5-year projection that we do every year of revenues over expenditures. But what we're showing here is that looking ahead, we see potential deficits, significant deficits showing up in the fiscal year 29 forecast. It's due to a number of things. The big one is really the CalPERS cost, and then not being able to project sales tax at inflationary levels. That's the problem, is when we try to project sales tax, we just don't end up, we end up putting it at like 2.5%, because it just hasn't grown with inflation over time. I will note, though, that this isn't new. I feel like almost ever since I've been city manager, we've had multi-year projections that show deficits, and we've done a lot of things over time to close them. That's included, thanks to the voters, improving different taxes. We have also done economic development. The Fairfield Hotel, I remember, was built sort of at the height of the Great Recession and provides north of $500,000 a year of general fund to the city. We implemented the cannabis tax. Voters implemented the cannabis tax, which generates pretty significant revenue for the city. We've adjusted our parking rates. There's been a lot of different things over time. So I don't want people to look at that sort of fiscal projection and think the world's coming to an end. Oh, and then sort of the last step that we've had to do a few times during the Great Recession and the pandemic is we've adjusted service levels, which is obviously the most painful thing to do, but these are all things that we've done in the past to fill the gaps. So we've always found a way to manage through it. I'm confident we will find a way to manage through this moving forward, whether it's through economic development, through looking hard at the service levels, looking hard at our budget, finding ways to make it work. Okay, I'm not going to talk that much longer, but I do want to talk about a few things that make Capitola special. I talked a little bit about sales tax and how Capitola uses sales tax, and it's a blessing. This is how we stack up against. These are cities that we often compare ourselves to in Capitola. They're similar, either coastal, tourist-oriented, not too big, pretty small, but not too small. So we do pretty well compared to a lot of these peer cities in terms of sales tax per person. You'll note that I did not include Carmel on the list because it kind of blows up the whole chart. Because when you do it, you kind of actually see the difference between the rest of us. For Carmel, they generate, I think it's almost 4 times the amount per capita that even we generate. Property tax, on the other hand, Capitola is a pretty low property tax city. And that's due to a variety of factors, most specifically Prop 13 and kind of just timing and what other taxes were in place when that happened. And you can see we're on the lower side. We're not as bad off as Scotts Valley, but we're on the lower side. And again, I didn't include Carmel just to be consistent between the two, and they are also the leader per capita. All right, so I've talked a lot about challenges, talked a lot about sort of where we're going in the future, where we get money, what things look like. I want to also talk about kind of the gifts. Capitola is a place people want to be. We have higher levels of service than our neighbors. We do have that higher per capita sales tax spend than in other jurisdictions around us. We've got some pretty amazing, our new library is pretty amazing, some pretty amazing new facilities that have been coming online. We've got the beach. There's a lot to love about Capitola, and there certainly are challenges, but I think there's also some really amazing gifts and amazing things and reasons why so many people want to be here. So, with that, I have one more slide before I'm going to transition to somebody else. She's going to fix it again. Now we're going to start talking about some projects, but I'm going to take the first one, which is kind of just this big picture challenge that we're facing as a city. And I know you read about this in the newspaper, but it's kind of striking that over the last not that many years, there's been more than 100 bills passed in Sacramento that deal with zoning and planning and housing. Most of these laws are intended to increase production of housing. That's the goal, is that we have a housing crisis in the state, and they're intended to put cities in a position where they're going to have to produce more housing. But it also has reduced local control, which is a challenge for a lot of folks. They've also put in place enforcement mechanisms so that if you're not in compliance on your housing element, that the state can step in, and there's certain things that they can do. The picture behind me is actually, it's not a cartoon. That is, believe it or not, is actually a project in Menlo Park on the former Sunset Magazine site when the city of Menlo Park was out of compliance on their housing element. This is what's called the Builder's Remedy Project. If you don't have a certified housing element, people can write their own zoning. And if it looks like it, it is actually, the developer is actually the son of a Russian oligarch. So that may not surprise you by that design. Okay, and with that, I am going to turn it over to Katie Hurley, our Community Development Director, who's going to talk about some of the planning projects. Thank you all.
Katie, can I jump in for a second?
Please.
I wanted to talk about this flyer that was left on everybody's seat. I meant to do it earlier and I forgot. This awesome flyer that Chloe made for us. On the back, there's notes. You can write your question in there. I meant to say that earlier, so I know that's a lot of information, and we're going to do all the questions at the end. So there's a spot you can write down your questions. Thank you, Chloe.
There's some extras up front.
Okay, good evening. It's great to see you all here. A lot of familiar faces out there. Thanks for getting your permits, and thank you for volunteering, because that's how I know you all. So, I'm Katie Hurley. I'm the Community and Economic Development Director for the City of Capitola, and it's a pleasure serving you all. Within our department, we have 5 full-time staff. We're actually hiring 2 right now, a building official and senior planner, if you know anyone. But our job is really to capture the vision of the people of Capitola and put it into plans for the future, and then to implement those plans on a daily basis through creating long-term plans, as well as getting in front of the Planning Commission, our great Planning Commission, and reviewing live projects and applications for entitlement. And then from there, Jessica, and there's more implementation in the field of personal people developing, as well as city projects. So we're really planning for the future and implementation. Our department was renamed this year. We used to be the Community Development Department. We're now the Community and Economic Development Department. The city, within planning, we tend to focus on housing production, commercial development, and we're really focused, when you're seeing these challenges that Jamie has brought up, on the future and making sure we're sustainable in terms of economics and being able to continue to provide services at the level that you experience today. So a couple of our projects. I love my job, it's fun, we get to plan for the future, and Capitola Wharf Master Plan is something that's actively happening right now. After the 2023 storms, when our beloved wharf broke, we started what was a short-term plan just to get it back up and running. Jessica's crew was amazing. There was an active project at that time. So we did our short-term plan to get boat and bait back out there and fishing, and many of you probably participated in the long-term planning that's started last spring and is right now in the development stages. We brought out 7 different concepts for the Capitola Wharf over the summer, and at a city council meeting in late summer, we were given direction to move forward with a concept that is a hybrid between what existed on the wharf before with an independent restaurant and fishing concession, but also a new idea of creating this market space, so they're combined. And so Fuse Architecture, a local architecture firm, is working on this now, and I hope to have a project in front of the city council come the early next year. This is a big lift, the hybrid approach. It's going to be expensive. So as we move forward, and we'll take the master plan and put it out to an RFP to see if there's a private entity that would like to partner with the city and lease our space and develop a project out there. So they would own the project and the city would lease the space to them. So really exciting project for 2026. The next two projects I'm going to talk about have to do with the 41st Avenue corridor and the Capitola Mall. And we're working these two long-range projects together, and it's great because you're seeing how the long-range efforts can come together and be implemented. So 41st Avenue corridor, the goal here is many people, when they experience 41st Avenue, they could say it's anywhere USA, right? As you're driving down there, if you weren't to see the public art in certain spaces, when you see a lot of the buildings and the plazas, it doesn't really have that much of an identity. So within our 41st Avenue corridor study, we're trying to, we control the road, the street as the city, we don't control the private properties. This is really a city-led initiative towards placemaking and making better streets and a better place, and improving the public realm. And the goal here is to create a great place for businesses to stay and create a place that people want to go walk the street or walk in the neighborhoods, and then also create a space in which 41st Avenue corridors, we're anticipating the majority of our growth in terms of housing, so making sure that the streets can really continue to work efficiently, but also have more multimodal transportation in terms of pedestrians, bicycles, cars, and public transit. So that is actively happening. We did some public outreach in October. We reported to City Council last week on this. They gave great direction on, let's not just look at 41st Avenue, we're really focused in on the mall right now. They asked us to include Clare Street and Capitola Road, so we'll really make sure those connections are strong around the mall as well. So that's the 41st Avenue corridor. We're expected to finish this probably January or February of next year. So, Capitola Mall. I saw Brian Kirk is here this evening from the Capitola Mall, and if you haven't been to the Capitola Mall recently, it's a great spot. There's a lot of local businesses in there right now, as well as our local children's museum. So keeping it, I know we haven't seen a redevelopment project yet, but what they do have in there, it's pretty impressive, and it's a great spot for small business startups right now too. So here's an aerial of 41st Avenue. You might recognize the red roof picture at the bottom. That's Sears when it first came in. And so this speaks for itself of the transition from agriculture to a shopping place, and now we're really concentrated on what is the future along 41st and the mall. I get questions all the time about what is the city doing for the Capitola Mall, and we have been busy for the last 15 years, probably 20 years, actively trying to engage the mall owners and bring them into redevelopment. Efforts have included providing redevelopment money. I think there was $1 million for a transit center move at one point. And then doing long-range visioning plans, updating codes, updating general plans. And so a lot of efforts in trying to initiate that redevelopment. In 2019, we had a plan that came in. It was exciting. It was an open market, great shopping center with a town square. That plan, like many plans that probably came out in 2019, did not happen because of the pandemic and just the changing economics following the pandemic around construction and retail. So currently, the housing element is a part of our general plan, and a big focus within our housing element is the Capitola Mall and utilizing that site in the future to provide more housing. So when I talk about the Capitola Mall tonight, I'm really talking about the whole block. It's not just the parcels that you think of walking into the mall. It includes the Citibank, the Bank of America, Olive Garden. So Merlone Geyer owns the spine of the mall, the Sears building, the Kohl's. They're the primary owner of the Capitola Mall. And so on their site, we are anticipating about 1,100 more units and that were included in the housing element. And then there's 2 parcels that they own that were not included in the housing element. So ultimately, when we see a project, I think if they were to go to their capacity, it'd be about 1,350 or so units is my guess. For the entire mall block, when you look at the whole block, the projections are up to 1,777 units. So within our housing element, we have to plan and be able to accommodate these units. So the city, we're not the developer. We do not have a development proposal at this time from Merlone Geyer or any other mall entities. And we're planning to make sure that we can accommodate those units. How do we do that? We made a commitment within our general plan to increase the height at the Capitola Mall. Right now it's at 40 feet by code. And it can go up to 50 feet for a community benefit in our code currently. And we're talking about, in our housing element, we committed to 75 feet, and then we're also looking at possibly 85 feet so that we can incentivize the developer to bring in a couple things that are really important to our community. And we also made more adjustments to our floor area ratio to take parking structures out, which also incentivizes the developer to provide more parking on the space. So right now we're working on zoning code updates to implement this. Last night I see a couple planning commissioners in the room, and we spent 3 hours talking about zoning code updates at the Capitola Mall. So we went through a lot of different discussions on how do we work through these dynamics. One thing that's really important, as Jamie talked about our fiscal challenges in the future, is making sure that the mall doesn't just turn into housing, that we still have commercial on the site. So in our conversations last night with the Planning Commission, it's really focused on not just housing, but keeping that a mixed-use center, creating a great neighborhood, creating great streets, and also thinking about maybe having a hotel on the site and allowing a variety of uses. We're tasked with creating objective standards, which just create consistency for the developer. Objective standards are measurable standards, so they know exactly what we're expecting as a community when they come in. We no longer talk about neighborhood compatibility. We talk about heights and setbacks and entryways and design standards, so it's much more predictable when it comes before the Planning Commission. The timeline we're on, in terms of housing element implementation, we've been working on this for about 2 years overall. Last year, we updated our entire zoning code to remove hurdles to housing. So requiring less parking on a single family home. It used to be up to 4 spaces, now it's a maximum of 2. And just things to really help accommodate housing and projects. More recently, in the beginning of this year, we updated our multifamily zoning, and now we are focused on the mall. In terms of the mall, we've had a public outreach meeting in October, we've had stakeholder meetings, and last night was our 3rd our Planning Commission work session. December 4th, if you're not busy, come on by City Hall, and we'll be looking at the first draft of the objective standards. So, and we're anticipating to take this to City Council in January or February of next year and adoption in early 2026. So that's been keeping us busy. So the City Hall complex, this is another project that I started working on about 2 years ago. There's not much going on in terms of this project, but I think it's important for you all to be updated on. So the City Hall complex is not just City Hall. There's the police station, there's the museum out front, and overall it's 7 acres between the lower and upper parking lots. So it's a really great asset for the city of Capitola. In 2023, we did a study, and the study came back with just an assessment study on the structure itself, and it came back saying that we're in the floodplain, we're undersized, hence the meeting here tonight and not in our city council chambers. When we have a big crowd, we don't have enough seats. And then it just doesn't meet modern standards in terms of customer service and then also for the employees' space. Right now, this is not an active project, but the next phase of this would be if we prioritize this in a future budget, the next phase would be to set goals of what do we want our civic center to be, and then to move forward with drawing up some options and deciding on the option. Once an option is decided on, then we would look for funding. So there's more to the process, but we put that on pause because so much else is going on within the city. This is my last slide this evening. Many of you probably recognize this space as either the old theater site in the village, the Swenson parking lot where you can get a really nice spot next to the beach for only $75 for the day, I think. We get complaints on that, like, that's not our lot. But Swenson's a great developer. They developed the La Bahia downtown, which has been really exciting in the city of Santa Cruz. In 2019, they came in with a conceptual project for an 88-room hotel, and that too, due to just 2020 and the hurdles, that went on the wayside. And we're hoping to see that come back in eventually, or some type of hotel. Our general plan outlines benefits there, that they can get additional height and there are less restrictions in order for a hotel to come forward. And as you know from Jamie's presentation, hotels are a great revenue source to keep our city sustainable. At this time, we do not have a project. We have just the conceptual drawings from 2019, but that wraps up my presentation this evening, and I appreciate you all being here. Thank you.
Okay, so we're almost at an hour, and I have a lot of slides, but we're going to go quickly. And we have a website with every one of these projects has a web page on our website. You can always call over to Public Works. We're happy to talk about any of these projects with you, but I'm going to give you some broad information this evening. So good evening, my name is Jessica Kahn. I am the Director of Public Works for the City of Capitola. Up here are the rock stars of my crew. I am the second, thank you. I have the second biggest department in the city, most of which is our maintenance staff. So they control most of the operations in the city. They are the rock stars. Most of what I'm going to be talking about this evening is about capital projects. So we have a capital improvements program in the city. It's adopted every year with the budget, and it has all of the current projects we're working on. Each project has its own timeline, so it may be in construction, it may be in planning at any given time, but they're all included in the budget. Most cities have what's called a 5-year capital improvements program. The city had one of those up until the Great Recession when we lost a lot of funding, had a whole lot less staff, and a whole lot less projects, and it's a heavy lift to create this document. We're currently developing one for our next fiscal year to have all of our current projects in them, and some of our unfunded but tracking projects in them as well. Projects for capital projects are identified by need. If something is failing, like one of our facilities, by regulations from the state that require us to do stormwater upgrades, and then also projects that the council brings during budget time. So the biggest project we have going right now at about $10 million is all of the improvements out at Tree Street Park. So that is actually 4 separate projects, including the renovation of our community center, the patios on the community center, which are both funded by CDBG funds, which are federal housing funds, a restroom renovation, and of course the Treasure Cove playground that was supported by the Friends of County Parks. So all 4 of those projects are currently in construction. They're tracking to be completed by early summer of next year. And again, they are funded in multiple ways, about $2 million of city funding, but all of the rest of that funding is leveraged from outside of the city. An ongoing project that we have every year is our pavement maintenance program. We have a 5-year pavement maintenance plan where every street in the city is analyzed for its condition and longevity, and based on the funding that council allocates for that, and for our city, it would be Measure D and SB1 funds, some of those restricted funds, gas tax funds that Jamie was mentioning earlier. We prioritize streets. So we don't get to every street in every 5-year cycle. We don't get to every street in every 10-year cycle based on the funding that we put into this, but we do have an order that we do the streets. It is not always the worst streets first. Those streets are very expensive to repave. A lot of the times you'll see us slurry seal or do a lesser maintenance treatment on a better street because that increases the life of the street. So over the whole life of the street, it's cheaper over time to keep it up while it's still good. We do throw in there some of our poorer streets, some of our arterials that need more rehabilitation. So that plan is really a mix. One of those current plans right now is improvements on 41st Avenue. So this is different from the project Director Hurley was talking about. That is a planning project. This is an actual project that's going to be constructed within the next year. So this includes pavement rehabilitation from Claire's up into the city limits, and the city limits goes over the freeway, just right over the freeway. And it also includes bike and pedestrian improvements, and it is partially funded with a grant for the RTC. One of the big benefits of this project is actually related to those auxiliary or exit-only lanes that were installed in the past year. I know we've gotten a lot of complaints up at City Hall about people getting off southbound on 41st and then jetting over the overpass and getting back on. The divided bike lanes, which is, there's examples here, are going to prevent people from doing that. So you won't be able to do that anymore without damaging your vehicle. A couple projects that are not city projects, but I know very much affect city residents, are those auxiliary lane projects that are being completed by the RTC in coordination with Caltrans. So that 41st to SoCal Drive project is completed, but the Bay Avenue corridor to State Park Drive is still under construction. That project includes the reconstruction of the Capitola Avenue Bridge. We anticipate that to be open in the next couple months. Again, not my project, so I can't give you any guarantees, but it is tracking to be completed in the short term. There's also, we know that there are going to be closures and openings of both the Bay Avenue and the Park Avenue on and off ramps. Again, we get the notices as often as you do. If you're not signed up for the RTC notices, I would strongly recommend that you go to their website. They do send out closure notices. Another adjacent project to the freeway for us is our Bay Avenue Corridor project. I am sure you're all very aware of the quick build project that was put in and then subsequently taken out. That project is complete. This project is for the whole stretch of Bay Avenue from the freeway down to Monterey. So that includes conceptual roundabouts, both at the Bay Hill intersection, but also at the Bay Capitola Avenue, the Gales intersection. We've had an outreach meeting actually in this room about this project. That was at the end of last month. We are still doing outreach on that project with other stakeholders, and we anticipate coming back to the council this winter to kind of review some preliminary plans that we have taken with the feedback from our concepts to present to council to go to the next steps. We did get funding in this last round of funding from the RTC to move forward with our final design of this project, and having a final design allows us to apply for grant funding from Caltrans and others to actually construct these improvements. Another project we have on the horizon is our Cliff Drive Resiliency Project. So if you recall the storms from 2022, 2023, we had some significant erosion on our bluffs all around the city, but particularly here on Cliff Drive. Cliff Drive is what's considered a federal aid road, so it's eligible for funds from the Federal Highway Administration after disasters, kind of like FEMA. So they agreed with the city that that is an eligible project. We have earmarked funding for them for design, which we are currently in the almost at a design project for this. It also includes permitting and a local coastal plan update. We have a grant from the Coastal Commission to achieve that. I believe Director Hillehy is taking that update to council at the beginning of the year. So the funding we have is really only for about 25% of this project. These are very expensive projects. They are very difficult to construct. The emergency funding that we have from the federal government is something that has a timeline on it that we have to spend. So we anticipate getting that work completed as early as 2027. You have to request the funding from the federal government. You get in the queue, and then they give you the money that they said they were going to give you at their own pace. The city is also applying for grants to To further extend the limits of this project in addition to stabilizing the roadway, would also provide for bike lanes and the sidewalk, because we know that's been identified for a long time as a very popular walkway and coastal access point for our residents. The Grand Avenue pathway is a more recent project for us. The Grand Avenue, if you're not aware, the Grand Avenue used to be a two-way street up until the 80s, when it was then closed because of coastal erosion, and it's been a pathway ever since. More recently, in those same storms in 22, 23, and then also more recently this year, we've had some localized erosion that has caused a closure of the pathway. Currently, we are starting a engineering design or a conceptual design to potentially become an engineer design to relocate that pathway, which would include grading and drainage. This is on the council agenda for the next meeting on December 11th, if you care to look at that staff report. And there is quite a bit of backup information that was also at our last council meeting if you want the geologist report, but this is something Public Works is currently working on advancing. Another project that is in the queue is the Stockton Bridge. So this bridge is almost 100 years old. It's what's called a concrete box girder bridge, and it is the oldest of its kind in the state of California. This bridge has had flooding issues in the past, documented. Also, the upstream bridges in the Soquel Creek have been replaced. So ours are the only ones in this creek that have the piers in water, which can cause flooding and also get hit with debris. During those 22, 23 storms, we had to do some repairs from debris that hit and damaged the bridge. State Senator John Laird sponsored some money for us to start looking into how can we do some debris diversion or mitigation for this bridge. The first report from our consultant was presented to council earlier this year. Staff was directed to do a structure study of this bridge, which we are scheduling for later this winter. That study is going to include some lane closures, and that's just not something we wanted to do during the busy season for the village. Esplanade Park is a new project for us. This is the first year that was in the budget. So I'm sure you're familiar with Esplanade Park. We have concerts there. I believe they do plein air events there. It is also somewhere that gets overtopped with waves every single winter. And is also aging. There is a pump station under it owned by the sanitation district. Our bandstand's there. It's a very important spot for the city. So we applied for a grant to do both some resiliency studies, how to improve it for its longevity, but also to do just usability improvements that we have been informed that we will be awarded by the Coastal Conservancy at their next meeting, which is quarterly, which is in February. So that will be a project you will see us doing outreach on very early next year. This is a fun one. I know this is on a lot of people's top of mind. This is the Park at Richmond Mansion. Those top images there are what it looked like just prior to us getting started. And the bottom down here is our new amphitheater and some of the lighting at night. So this has been a city property for quite some time. I know there's been many iterations of improvements and plans for this site. The most recent ones were about a decade ago in 2015, and in 2023, we started this project. So the plans from 2015 were quite grand. They included a lot of landscaping and public art and things that we weren't able to achieve with the funding that we had for this project. There was general fund in this project and also a grant from Prop 68 for state parks. And then also Measure Q funding as well more recently. So we are at the punch list phase of this project. So there's some landscaping we have left to do, some signage we have to put up, but we anticipate this park to be open to the public in early December. So just in a couple weeks this year. Very exciting. I have 2 or 3 slides, I think. So a couple projects that aren't quite projects yet, but more planning project for us are those related to sea level rise and sustainability. So the city has a climate action plan. It's from I want to say 2017. It's going to be updated. We're going to put out an RFP at the beginning of this year. And then we also have a mandated sea level rise study that we're required to do by the state, which we applied for. You might know that we applied for funding for with the Ocean Protection Council. We are not awarded. They are going to have other cycles that we will apply for. And so we have an environmental projects manager on my staff who keeps apprised of these projects, but also projects to collaborate throughout the county, because obviously sea level rise is going to be an issue for all of us. But the climate action plan will be something you see coming to council about mid next year. And then other projects that we have going on related to transportation and safety are our local road safety plan. Again, we had a public meeting here last month regarding that project. That is a data-driven plan about collisions in the city and identifying those corridors for improvements. And then our active transportation plan, which we received a state grant for towards the end of this year and will be starting up early next year. The active transportation plan is going to take a lot of these planning efforts that we have going on with community development, and then also our local road safety plan, our Bay Avenue corridor plan, and put those all in a comprehensive plan so we have a citywide roadmap for both safety, transportation, and bike and ped improvements. That really sets the city up for have more grant funding available to us. And really, those are how these large transportation projects get done. They get done with grant funding and then a match of city general fund or restricted funding. The other projects we have, again, the climate action plan, also our multi-jurisdictional hazard mitigation plan that has been a work with the county and the cities and the special districts throughout the county that is currently being reviewed by FEMA. Again, it's one of those things that identify all of our facilities and roads and what hazards are applicable to them and projects we can do to make them more resilient and make us eligible for grant funding. And with that is a ton of information. If you go to our city website on our Public Works page, we have fun little buttons with corresponding pictures of all of these projects where you can find more information. You're welcome to call me or my staff or email us about any of these questions, because I know a lot of these are on your local streets and roads, like literally where you live, and so you want to be engaged. On top of that, we do public outreach for specific projects. We do mailers, notices, follow us on social media for updates. And with that, I'm going to toss this over to Captain St. Ryan. No, sorry.
It's a real mistake giving me a microphone. They strategically put me at the end, so it's just going to be 1 more hour. I'm joking. But I will say, being with Capitola for so long, I should have made bets with the OGs that have since retired about risk expansion, because that place, we never thought that place generated some really fun police work. So I'm happy. I never thought I'd see the day, and maybe I might, throw a little party down there invite all the old retired guys to come back and see what's happened. Okay, I only have 3 slides. So we are small but mighty, as you guys know. I mean, that's why you're all here. 22 sworn, 31 full-time staff, so that includes our non-sworn records, CSOs, parking, so 31 total. And I think most of you know what we're about. We provide a high level of service, no call too small, that's the way we do it, and we like to spoil our community, and that's the way all of us have been trained that work here, and we just continue with that. And I'm always very impressed that our other local public safety professionals come and bring their families to our city to enjoy the time because of the services that are provided. It's just a great place to be. So both of my projects I'm going to talk about have to do with connectivity, really. So the first one is something that we all talk about all the time, e-bike safety. Yes, everybody gets excited. Everybody woke up. So this is an issue, right? E-bikes have just been on the rise, and kids are on bikes that go really fast. They don't even have driver's licenses. They don't understand the rules of the road. Parents are buying them for them. So really reaching out and working with the community. I think a lot of you know, if you follow us on social media, we do a lot of outreach here with New Brighton Middle School to all grades, and we do it a couple times a year. We're really looking at doing some more partnerships and seeing if we can finding some different outreaches. I've been talking to CHP. They've done some really good e-bike campaigns and had some success. And then at the state level, the laws need to really catch up with what we're seeing out there with the e-bikes, but really taking a proactive approach. And as we move forward with our city website, I think it's going to be really important for us to communicate with the community about what we are doing in regards to e-bikes. How many bikes are we confiscating? Because we are taking them. We are taking the kids' bikes and calling their parents. How many sites are we writing? People don't know that, and they think, well, nothing's happening. When in fact, things are happening, we're just not necessarily talking about it. And that's a mistake on our part. So with the improvements with our website, it's a little clunky right now, but we have plans. We want to make that information accessible to everybody. Ring. This is not exciting for you guys, but it's very exciting for me. So it's called the Ring Project, but it's a regional and interoperable next generation radio project. So if you're somebody that enjoys radios, but connectivity is, our ability to transmit has really been an issue for all public safety, fire and police in this jurisdiction. We're coastal, we've got highs, we've got lows, from the North Coast all the way down to South County. So collectively, all of the agencies have come together. It's an expensive project. It's going to take a few years to get completely off the ground, but improving our radio infrastructure. Our equipment's very antiquated. We get affected by weather, by fog, by rain. So, I was told way back when I was in training, if you can't communicate where you are, you're lost. So we really depend on that, and it's an issue with safety. So this is a broader project, an expensive project that we're going to be embarking on in this next fiscal year. I think you guys gave me this last slide too, how to stay connected. So as we move into the winter, staying connected is important. You want to seek information if we're flooding, if we're preparing for storms. We don't want to over communicate and then people just kind of drown us out like we're just that annoying voice in the background. But please stay connected. We use Nixle, we use Cruz Aware, and follow our websites. We're all trying to really be as active as we can on social media if you follow us. And am I talking about city waves and all of this? When do I hand it over to Chloe? I wasn't here for the rehearsal. I had to go to the Chiefs County meeting, so what else do I have to do, Jamie? I'll just keep going. Anyway, thank you. That's it for me.
Thank you so much, Chief Ryan. We're almost at the end here. One more slide to go. We have our social media accounts, Capitola PD, both Facebook and Instagram. Other ways that you can be involved, I think a lot of you know, I think a lot of you are on volunteer committees or have been in the past, but you can always sign up. We generally appoint to our volunteer committees right after the election cycle. So if you're interested in serving sort of around November, December timeframe around the election is a good time to check out our website and look at what boards and commissions you might be able to serve on. We also do a Citizens Academy. We do this every 2 years before the election. So if you're ever thinking of running for election, it's a great opportunity to learn a little bit about local government. I've seen a couple of people here in the room who've been through that local government academy. Some of these slides were actually cobbled together from that. So it's a good opportunity to learn more, kind of do a deeper dive into the city and learning about it. And then people are always welcome to attend our council meetings. Our next council meeting is coming up in, I think that's 3 weeks, but December 11th, that'll be our next council meeting, which will be our last council meeting of the year before we take the break for the holidays and then kick back up in January. So with that, I think we have some questions and answers. So I'm going to turn it over to Mayor Clark and see how I can help you with this process.
Thank you. That was a lot of great information. Something that we can't always do, but it's so grateful to do it. I think we'll probably split it in half if Chloe, you want to do one side. We'll do the questions. We'll start off with one question. We'll get through the room and there's more questions. We'll go from there, but we'll bring the microphones to you.
Maybe just have people say it and then let's give it a shot.
Sure. So who has questions first?
Is there a plan conceptual compared to large housing, 75
I'll repeat the question.
Is there a plan view of where the location is? Is it set back off 41st or is it closer to?
So the question was about, is there a plan or plan view about how close the development of the mall could be to 41st, Claire's, and Capitola Road? And so I'll kick this over to Director Herlihy. Can you help us out, Katie?
Great question. So as of right now, we do not have a plan from the developer. So we know once we get the zoning code done, then we'll see if they bring in a plan. Last night at our planning commission meeting, the planning commission asked for a 100-foot buffer from 41st Avenue, that the heights will be lower within that area, and then they could go up after the 100-foot buffer or 125-foot buffer to the 75 or 85 feet, depending on the project. The 85 feet will only be allowed if they were to bring in a hotel and retail, so that's the motivator there.
Any more questions over here? One over here for Tori.
So you mentioned, I think I can talk about it enough. You mentioned the TOT tax. It goes towards youth programs as well. But you didn't mention the youth programs. What are the youth programs that go towards?
All right, so the question was, I mentioned the TOT tax, that we have a restricted youth funding peel off in the TOT for youth programming. And the question is, where does that go? So that goes, it's really up to the city council where that goes. Right now, the majority of the funding, we call it the ECYP funding, goes towards grants to nonprofits that provide services to youth. So Big Brother, Big Sister, the Museum of Discovery. Help me out here, I'm looking for another recipient of. Yeah, the equities, that's CASA. In addition, we also use the funding to pay for scholarships for some of our various Camp Capitola and various other recreation programs. So for scholarships and for some nonprofits to provide services to youth. Okay.
More questions? Yes.
Thank you. That was an excellent presentation, by the way. I really appreciate you putting the time to put that together. Just as kind of an aside, we just happened to be vacationing in Balboa Island in Southern California, and they've approved to put all utilities underground there. It's a very expensive thing to do, but they have approved it. I don't know if it's ever been floated as an idea here. I've heard various discussions off and on. I don't even know if there's an appetite for doing something like that, but has that come up in discussion? And if it has, where does that fit with all the other projects that are potentially on your plate?
That's a great question. So the question, I guess I don't need to repeat it, he has a microphone. So it was about undergrounding utilities. So the city has gone through the process to underground utilities in a few key areas. The village, I know, is underground. We also have, the way it works in California is you can form undergrounding districts as a city, and then a little bit of everyone's PG&E bill gets set aside and gets paid into an account that then the city can use to underground utilities. And so we have another undergrounding district, which is actually around kind of Bay Avenue and Capitola Road. I'm looking over at Jessica to make sure I'm getting it right. So we do have a plan, and we are plan to get some undergrounding done there. But beyond that, there aren't plans to do sort of further undergrounding up to the freeway. It's very expensive. I mean, that's one of the realities, is that it's just not a project that's super easy to do.
Hi, this question is for Jessica. On the, where the cliff was damaged in that, I could see on the picture the yellow square. What's the scope? What are we going to do in that yellow square?
So there's a current retaining structure there from about 1997 that's failing. So that would be replaced, and then there would be a full bluff retention. And so we have plans for that. It does need to get a permit from the Coastal Commission, so those plans aren't set in stone, but it is to be retention of that bluff side in that area.
It's just in the yellow square area. You didn't have to do the rest.
So the yellow square area, that we have right now reflects the amount of funding we currently have available. So that's the funding from the federal government, from the FHWA. Again, we have some grants out. We're hoping to have, the more money we have, the more we can expand that, but that is the most critical piece right now that is in danger of failing.
The other point I'll add to that is that it's about a quarter of the total bluff. It's about a quarter of the total bluff. And to some degree, there's a little bit of, I think, project delivery success. If we have project delivery success, we learn about how to do the construction and we show federal agencies that we can get this done. I think we're going to be very well positioned to do the rest over time. But we're addressing the most urgent need, the place that's most in danger of failing, which, obviously would be significant impact to the community to have to go to one-way or closures on Cliff Drive. So, Mr. Mayor.
On that same area, slightly outside of the yellow rectangle is the stairs to the beach. When are those ever going to get fixed?
That is a good question. I'll turn these over to Jessica.
So those stairs, I'm sure over many years have been blown out. They have been blown out twice in the 3 years that I have worked here. So it didn't seem prudent to replace them in the same manner. We are intending on replacing them in time for next summer with something that is removable, so when the next storm comes through, they don't blow out again. And the long-term project of the Cliff Drive Resiliency Project, those stairs will be replaced with a permanent, likely concrete structure.
Yeah, for those of you that are familiar with Capitola, we do the floating docks every summer off the wharf. And that's kind of been the idea is the bottom of Hooper Stairs. It's part of our sort of winter, summer setup rather than continually rebuilding the wooden stairs at the bottom is we roll some aluminum stairs out every summer.
Hi, my name is Goran Klapic. I'm former security guard of Zelda's on the beach. I did the front door with George. I have a question. How do you justify that you have a marijuana dispensary on the 41st Avenue? Are you teaching teenagers and kids that it's okay to smoke marijuana, like they did in the movie Friday with Snoop Dogg? Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Klevich. So the California voters passed cannabis legalization, I'm not sure when it was, and then Capitola voters approved a tax on cannabis, and the city council, subject to the approval of that tax, approved an ordinance that allowed up to 2 dispensaries in the city of Capitola. So that's how that came about.
I have 2 questions, one for Jamie, one for Katie. Jamie, in the past, city managers have asked the city council to do management audits to determine if the city is staffed in the most efficient and cost-effective way. I don't believe we've had one of those since you've been city manager. Would you consider doing that? And the question for Katie is, the state has required 1,334 housing units for Capitola for the next, whatever, many years it is. But yet we're zoning the mall for 1,777. We've rezoned Park Avenue for, I think, close to 300, and we've zoned several other parcels. And my question to you is, why is the city zoning parcels far, far in advance and in excess of what the state requires?
Okay. So the first question is a management audit. I think that that's certainly something that we'd be happy to do if the council decides it's a priority. Every year our budget is tight, and it always comes down to what projects we want to put our resources into. But if the city council would like to, we can certainly put it in the hopper and talk about it at budget time. Second question for Katie. I know that this is a bit of a tricky one, and there's a bit of a story behind how we got here. So go ahead, Katie.
Yep, thank you. So yes, within our housing element, we were assigned 1,336 units. And on the Capitola Mall site, when we first, you have to have your housing element certified by the state. So when we first submitted our housing element, we submitted I think it's about 350 units that are required under our RENA. That's the Regional Housing Needs Assessment, our number that we were assigned for just the Capitola Mall block. And we submitted, it was about, I think, 350 affordable units, and then a 30% increase to that for market rate units. When we submitted to the state, we did not get certified. They said, Merlone Geyer came out, the mall owner, and said this is infeasible. We could never produce 65% affordable housing and 35% market rate. there's no return on investment, we won't do it. So at that point, we relooked at the feasibility of it, and so the numbers increased significantly. We're still at the same affordability numbers of about 350 affordable units, but we increased the market rate units, which don't have deed restrictions on them and can be sold at market rate, to 80%. So the affordable number stayed the same, but the amount of market rate units were bumped up. So that's how we got there. Thank you.
Okay, on the same issue, so why do we have the highest density requirement more than most other jurisdictions? And do we have any recourse in terms of turning that around? Because it seems so unfair that the developers want to come to the coast and use our properties to fill up the coffers, whatever, and we're left holding the bag in terms of overdevelopment of this little teeny tiny town.
Another great question. So the way that the assignments to units go, it starts at the state level. Then the state figures out what we need in terms of units for housing productivity. Then those numbers are dispersed between the different regional planning entities. Our regional planning entity is AMBAG. And so at AMBAG, there were a little over 30,000, I think it was like 33,000 units assigned to our region. There's a formula that goes into play at the AMBAG level, where the AMBAG board reviews the formula, and it also has to be in compliance with state law of how they come up with this formula. So a portion of it is related to jobs. In Capitola, we've got 41st Avenue, the village, we have a lot of jobs within the Santa Cruz County area. And housing, existing housing and jobs ratios, as well as the AFFH requirements, which was new within this cycle of the new housing element cycle. And that really looks at your community as a whole. And if you have people that are making great incomes and you've got good jobs as well as great services, such as great schools, great parks, and things that really are a benefit to future residents to live there, the percentages climb higher. So the more services you have and the more people with wealth that you have, the more the numbers climb in terms of that formula. So on one side we have the housing and jobs number that's a nice healthy number. We also have a lot of people who make great incomes in Capitola, and we've got great services. So that combined resulted in us getting more, when the number came out, we were in shock. We looked to appeal because it didn't seem fair. They don't take into consideration the state parks, which we can't influence. In Capitola, I think New Brighton takes up 13% of our land, and it's the only vacant land in the city. We have at that time, we had less than a dozen vacant lots in the city. So it has been a great challenge, and just trying to figure out where we can accommodate that future housing. But that is how the formula works and how we got to where we are.
I will add that during that process, I know Director Hurley, he penned a number of letters to the AMBAG board pointing out some of these problems with the formula, that it didn't take into account city size and it didn't take into account available land. And I also know that the mayor at the time and city council penned a letter to the AMBAG board also pointing out sort of the discrepancy in the number of units per capita, the number of units per square mile, how we were so severely, we got so many more units than any other jurisdiction in the Monterey Bay region by virtually any metric. So that's the story of how it happened.
Yeah, so my question is, after living there 53 years, we watched our water rates go up substantially from SoCal Water. And we've had droughts, which we've lived through since we've been here. And I realized that Santa Cruz now is moving water, I'm not sure what kind of water it's going to be, but from Santa Cruz to this area for us to sustain our water situation. The problem being is that Santa Cruz is building so fast that I'm not sure that they're going to be able to give us much water by all the new units that they put in. And then we're putting in all these units. So how does Capitola, how do we plan on having enough water and utilities for all this new development that we have, that we're building, and we barely have enough water for today?
So I am not a water director. Water is provided by the Soquel Creek Water District and the City of Santa Cruz Water Department. I know that actually Director Hurley, he had those folks in and made a presentation to the Planning Commission, and they are each responsible for preparing, is it a 5-year plan? It's every 5 years, a municipal water service demand report, something like that, that takes into account the various sort of, the amount of development planned in the various jurisdictions. And so we have told them the development that we have to plan for pursuant to our housing element, and they have said that they can accommodate that need. So I know it's not maybe necessarily the most satisfying answer, particularly when you've lived through droughts and you've seen the water restrictions that we've had to put in place. I will tell you that Soquel Creek, as many of you know, has completed the Project Clean Water project, which does involve injection of clean water back into the groundwater. So I think they do think that they have a solution. I think time will tell.
I have 3 quick comments. Number one, I want to thank the city staff and so on. I think this is an excellent presentation. You guys did a great job of informing the city and the residents of what they did. Number 2, on the second comment I'd have is the fact that I might just return from Italy, and my question to the city is going to be, how can you consider a roundabout when the purpose of a roundabout is to facilitate traffic movement, but the whole purpose of the original restriction of Bay Avenue was to enhance it for pedestrians to get across the street. So I'd like the city to try and answer that question in the future. But my third question deals with a philosophical and action question, which is the city appears to be trying to take over some of the volunteer organizations that, or activities that have been, because we have a great set of volunteers, and I don't understand why we're bringing on staffing and stuff to do things when the volunteers have handled events like this in the past. And after the first couple of events on the wharf, your own report said that an event cost $20,000 to $60,000 to put on when volunteers were doing it for free. So just an ethical question I'd like to see in the future. Thank you.
All right. So let's tackle, should we just do a quick touch on the roundabouts?
So I believe the question was, why are we trying to do roundabouts? Because roundabouts put traffic through a corridor faster, or the idea is to put it in through smoother at a more reliable rate. And then the work that we did at Bay Avenue was geared toward pedestrian safety. So honestly, those things can do both. So yes, to have there's 3 types of intersections you can have. There's the stop-controlled intersection, which is what we have now, a signalized intersection, like stoplights. And then the third option we looked at for this project, which has been going on for about 2.5 years, is a roundabout. And that's the one we're currently pursuing with council direction right now. So in a roundabout, traffic doesn't stop, right? So you have continuous flow. You stop when you approach the roundabout, and when there's a spot in there, you go and you turn or you go through the roundabout. When you're a pedestrian, you cross only 1 lane of traffic at the roundabout. So when you're trying to go through an intersection like you have at Bay Avenue right now, there's 2 lanes going each way plus a turn lane in each way. So you are going across 3 lanes of traffic, and I want to say like 20 or something different ways people can turn through the intersection. When you're going across a roundabout, you are away from the roundabout. You're crossing 1 piece of road, there's a median, then you cross another piece of road, and you're only looking for 1 car. So you're either looking in this direction or that direction. So in concept, that is a safer position for someone crossing the street. This is all on our website.
There's a lot of great data out there about roundabouts and safety, and it's just fascinating to learn more about it. I think the other piece had to do with sort of how Art and Cultural Commission and our Community Services Recreation Department put on events. I think that there are great events that are put on by volunteer organizations, great events that are put on by our Chamber of Commerce, by our BIA, by our Community Services Recreation Department. Everybody works together on this stuff, you know, whether it's the concert series, Art and Wine, Wharf to Wharf, you know, they're all great events that make this community wonderful, and whether they're nonprofits that put them on, or the city puts them on, or they're put on by city committees, there's just always just different options and different ways in which these events can be presented. Okay.
More questions on this side? I have one over here on this side.
If you want to say it, I would be happy to repeat it, or we can wait for the microphone.
All right. I believe the original early draft for the number of units was about 477, and the new number of units for the Capitola Mall is 356, so that's about a 25% reduction, 112 units. So there is a big reduction of the low and moderate income units for the proposed project. So my question is about the cost of the city of adding new units, and how's the city planning to keep revenue so there's not a big financial impact?
So that's a really good question, and that gets back to all those financial numbers that we were looking at the beginning. The city provides a high level of service to its residents, and we did a study in 2019 when we had the mall development project done by an outside consulting group that estimated that each new person in the city cost the city about $785 to provide the same level of service. So if you were to build, let's just make up a number, 1,000 units that have one person in it each, that would be $785,000 of new cost to the city to provide the same level of service. That's a ballpark figure. It needs to be updated in time. But that gets at this question that Mr. McGuire is asking is how are we going to pay for all this? And so one of the things that Director Hurley mentioned when she was talking about the Planning Commission's review of the mall project is requiring specific amounts of commercial. Incentivizing. Incentivizing specific amounts of commercial, incentivizing hotel development, because those are the ways that we can actually balance the budget for a project like this. We developed an in-house model. It's not complete. It's just rough numbers, and it could work. You know, there's a way that we can make this project work for the city and maintain the same level of service as long as we can get a reasonable amount of commercial, high-level, high-quality commercial, Abbott Square type things, fast casual dining, some successful retailers like Alta, other folks that we already have there, and probably a successful hotel with a convention center. The numbers potentially can line up. But it's something that we have to really keep our eye on for sure.
One more quick question. For the affordable housing, have you guys done like a survey on city staff or teachers? Like, do people want to move into that type of housing? Is that going to serve the community, or is that just for new people coming in? We need housing, but we need housing for locals first.
So we have not done a survey like that. The city is precluded. So one of the things we've done with affordable housing projects in the past, and I think we would look to do in the future, is to provide priority for people that work in the city. And the city can do that. We could do that with affordable housing. We can't do priority for people that live in the city, and that has to do with sort of fair housing law and recurrent demographics. But we could, I think we've done it with the Bluffs project, and I think we did it with Bay Avenue Senior as well, was a priority for people who were either living or working in the community already.
Can I add to that?
Yeah.
And although we haven't done a survey, I feel like everyone in the room is living the survey. Like, we're trying to hire people to come work at the city. And one of the biggest reasons people will not take a job is because of the cost of living. So we know the need is there, but we have not done a survey.
Yeah, that's a good point. We had a fantastic candidate from out of state for building official, and he did one interview and didn't come back for the second one after he looked at housing prices.
Do we have a a start date or at least an update about our bicycle path through Capitola, like from 45th to State Park? Is there, or is that just gone quiet again?
I don't have an update. This question is, I believe it's about the rail trail. I don't know where that project is. Do you have an update, Jessica? I know that they're under deadlines to further, I really only know what I read in the newspaper. So, I mean, I guess I know that they're under deadlines to spend their ATP funding. So Capitola could take responsibility to build the trail. That's the way the city of Santa Cruz did it through their jurisdiction, is they've been getting grant funding and using general fund to build out portions of the trail through the city of Santa Cruz. Capitola could do that. I mean, I think right now the RTC has their big ATP grant and they have Measure D funding and they're planning on building it. So that certainly, I think, would be plan A, would be to figure out a way in which to have it done by somebody else. But plan B certainly would be our public works team could tackle it and our grant writers, and we could look at trying to build the trail ourselves. I don't have specific information. I am reasonably confident that the RTC, I know the RTC is working really, really hard on this trail project, and I am hopeful that they're going to come out a way to create a fiscally viable way to get a trail done and get it under construction in the next couple of years. But I don't have any inside information beyond what you read in the newspaper.
The question is, has the city considered moving a civic center up to 41st Avenue? If you have a developer there and it is not in the flood zone, is there space to build it up there? Because there is a lot of traffic and it would be really easy for people to come in and go there.
Yeah, we have looked at that in the past. That's really the next step in our housing study would be to look at that. It would be, housing study. Our civic center study would be to look into that question of like, what are the options and what are the costs, pros and cons of each of them. I will tell you that land around 41st Avenue is valued out at like, I don't know, $8 million an acre. And we also own 8 acres right here. So that's going to be a tough nut to crack, is figuring out a way to kind of, if we wanted to move to somewhere else, is how do you find that not only the cost to build the building, but on top of that, buy the land. So that'll be something we would have to look at. And that's what would be the next phase in the study is pros and cons of different approaches. Do we relocate on our own property? Do we relocate where we are today? Do we buy new land, move somewhere else?
All right, looks like we've had our questions. We'll bring it to public comment. Chloe, can we make it 90 seconds for anybody who'd like to come up? Great. How many folks would like to talk at public comment? Wow, this is, there we go. We'll do it right here at the podium, and Chloe will queue up 90 seconds for us. Well, welcome.
So I just want to use my 90 seconds saying thank you to the City Council for asking staff to do this. Thank you, staff, for doing this. I think that you've tonight really introduced yourselves to a big chunk of our community, our loyal community. And as we get to know you better, you get to know us better, and everything works better. So thank you very much. Took a lot of effort, and it's appreciated.
Thank you. Appreciate that. Further comment? There we go.
I'd just like to thank city staff for redoing Bay Avenue.
Thank you. Anybody else for public comment? I can come to you. Nope. Well, I want to thank everybody for coming. I guess I'd like to say that we probably most likely will do this again. It was awesome.
Thank you all. Be safe.
Have a great Thanksgiving, and see everybody at the next meeting, December 11th. Thank you.